Okay, so today what we're doing is we're going to go through a few different ways to loosen seized, rusted fasteners, bolts, nuts. And what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a few different ways that we do it here. A few of my favorite ways to take things off. Some people don't have access to certain things. But what we're working on is a 1970 C10 pickup truck. And everything's been on it for 46 years. So right now, we're going to try to take a few of them off without breaking bolts or, busting knuckles or what have you. So right now, we're going to get at it, and I'll show you a little bit on the way.
I'm Dave Grainger. I'm the president of the Guild of Automotive Restorers, a restoration company that's been in business for over 30 years. We have restored over 2,500 cars, trucks, and other vintage vehicles. If you're curious about what goes on behind the scenes of a large restoration shop, join us at the Guild's Classics.
The three main ones is using heat. With a torch, we're going to use quenching, which is using a torch, but then what we're going to do is super cool it quick. And then another is using your favorite penetrant. Everybody has their own favorites. We're going to work with what we have here and what I found to work the best over the years. Well, first things first, you have a premium good quality penetrating oil. These ones, when you're not in a hurry, spray something down, leave it, come back to it, and then you can, try to free up the bolt that way. So there's a lot of different brands. People have a lot of different ideas on what to use with it. This one's, one that we use here. If you don't have something like that, what I do is also, if I have something to soak in and you don't want to use a whole can of your penetrant, then you can use a combination of transmission fluid and diesel fuel. The transmission and diesel fuel together really works at it, gives it lubrication. That diesel fuel really gets in there and breaks up rust as well. So that's another thing that we use if we have something to soak in. If you're still not having luck with it, or another way is the torch. And to heat something up and take it off. Now, anytime that you have rubber in around where you're spraying or where you're going to heat, what you can do is you can buy a product that you can put on, and what it does is spraying this gel onto the rubber stops the rubber from catching fire and making a mess and stinking. So by spraying this around the rubber part, wherever that's sprayed, no heat gets to it. Nothing. So it's seized on there pretty good. So what we're going to do is get the torches out, and we're going to heat that up so it's a nice cherry color, and see if we can't get it to come off. We're just going to heat around the nut. Try to stay away from the center. Heat up the outside, get it good and red. Well, heating it up, because it's a metal, as you heat it expands the nut. So what it's doing is it's actually swelling the nut up and bringing it away from the bolt underneath of it. And when you're heating that, it's expansion and contraction. So what we're going to do is we're going to expand it so that it's not as tight on there, and then we can move this just like that. So what we've done is, now you'll hear it start to squeak, and what that is it's starting to cool again. And as it's cooling, it's tightening. So you get it back off, and it's good and hot. We can also quench it. So by quenching it with cold water, what you're doing is it's swollen and you're contracting it again. So what it's doing is it's breaking any rust in there apart, and it's not gonna come back as small as it was after you've heated it. And that's without using any major impact tools. So there is the nut, and it's in good shape. I mean, that makes it a heck of a lot easier than than trying to lubricate it and wait for it. But I mean, if you can lubricate it and wait, it will come apart. A lot of times, I mean, with a good product, you know, you can soak something overnight and come back in the morning, and a lot of times it'll come off. Sometimes they only need a few hours, depending on how seized they are. You know, dealing in the restoration business, you're dealing with stuff that, you know, we deal with stuff that's 30, 40, 50, 60, you know, 100 years old sometimes. You know, when you're taking things apart, you know, sometimes there's not much left. I mean, this is in pretty decent shape, really, for what it is. To have, you know, a nut like that's going to come off quickly. By trying to pull this rear end out and taking the shocks off, you know, we want to get this done today. So we need to take a step further. Everything to the front of the frame, we're going to be spraying down and taking apart. Sometimes we can put an impact on them after they've been sprayed, and you know, just the vibration of the impact gun will loosen them off. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray a couple of things, and there's certain things that you don't reuse, like the exhaust hangers and things like that, so we'll be cutting those off. You know, and that's the great thing about the torch. Cut things off, we're not saving that part. It's something that will be replaced on it. But when you're dealing with taking things apart and we have to catalog each item, when we pull that apart, so that nut's off, we have to take the other side off over here, and then once this is off, it needs to be tagged. Whether we're reusing it again or we're putting a new one on, it still has to be tagged, and all the parts have to be put together so that we have a record of it. You know, normally we take pictures and you know, check everything out to make sure that, you know, all the parts are here and it's ready for reassembly when the frame comes back from being powder coated. What we do is start to try to get it to move a little bit with the impact, and you know, it's one of those things that to move it back and forth, get everything lodged in there, and then go forward a little bit, and then go backwards again. Now that we've got it moving a little bit, perfect time to hit it with a little bit of penetrating oil. And what we're going to do is, by moving it back and forth, we're loosening up the rust. And now that the penetrating oil's on there, what we can do is get that to come off. Off it came. So by moving it back and forward, you're breaking it up. If you just put it on and hammer it reverse, you're gonna have a very good chance of snapping the bolt off. And if the bolt's seized in there, then you know you're drilling and heating and everything else. And it's a good way to do it if you don't want to add heat in around the uppers, especially on these shocks. You know, if you don't have the chemical that keeps it from burning the rubbers, then you're going to have, you know, melted rubber and everything going all around, and it's going to fill the air with black smoke, and it's, you know, it's not great, especially if you're doing it at your garage at home. You know, or in a shop where you have freshly painted cars or different things around you that, you know, all the little flakes of rubber that are going to float in the air are going to settle on something. And, you know, by going back and forth, moving it back and forth, and use some lubrication, it you know, comes off fairly easy. It's dropping it down almost 20 degrees right away. It's a rust penetrant that also is super cold. So by cooling something, you can actually, you know, you can actually break it free. Super cooling something, because when you heat things, they expand. If you're spraying a bolt, what you're doing is you're contracting it, taking the molecules, contracting them, and then loosening a nut off of it. So if you can super cool it, that's another way to remove things. I mean, you can prove it that it drops from 70 degrees down to 60 degrees with just a spray like that. And it takes, you know, some of the good ones you can drop 25 to 30 degrees instantly. So right there and then, you know that you're actually contracting the metal. Got that down to 26 degrees right there, which will definitely shrink, but it's dropping it from 70 degrees Fahrenheit down to 26, 27 degrees Fahrenheit. So by doing that, that is ice cold, and that can actually help free up a seize nut, because what you're doing is you're cooling that bolt so it's contracting and then makes the nut easier to turn and get off. It's another interesting product, and it gives you another option, especially when torches aren't available. It gives you the, you can contract the metal, and it'll free up a lot of rust particles that are built up in the threads. And we showed that in the one bolt where it was actually, you could see where the rust was inside the thread, and that's what's jamming it. It's not allowing that nut to turn on it. So by contracting the metal, you can get that to turn past it and then get it off.